All right, everybody, we are here for week 11, now showing with Mike and Wayne. Wayne has returned. He is gracing us with his presence. So last week, if you listen, I did like my top 10 of the year. That was just kind of a filler till we get back to doing what we do. And this week, we're going to talk bro movies, dude movies, bromance movies, whatever you want to call them. That's what we're going to go with. I'm going to let Wayne start this week. And go ahead, sir.
I am kicking this one off with 2009's The Hangover, directed by Todd Phillips. What can I say about this movie? It is a classic. It is hilarious. It is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Yeah, and I'm taking it to that level. The only movie I may have laughed at harder was Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor. Just side-splitting for me. All right, so basically the breakdown, Zach Galifianakis, Bradley Cooper, and Ed Helms are celebrating Justin Bartha's wedding with a bachelor party in Vegas. What else do you need to know? Hilarity ensues. People go missing. Drugs are consumed. Heather Graham, Jeffrey Tambor, Mike Tyson, Rachel Harris, Rob Riggle all make an appearance in one way, shape, or form. I know I don't really need to talk to you guys about this movie because I'm guessing almost all of you have seen it or at least know of it. Just amazing, hilarious. It spawned 2 sequels that were not as funny. Some of you enjoyed. I enjoyed it a little, but definitely did not enjoy the sequels as much as the first one. But you want to talk about a movie that produces one-liner after one-liner. Yeah, just fantastic. Kirky, I'm sure you can share some of your experiences and thoughts with this film.
Yes, this movie, when it came out, I was like kind of last to see it out of everybody that I knew. I ended up going to see it in theaters by myself, actually. It was a pretty packed crowd, but I laughed my butt off the entire time, from start to finish. It's hilarious. It was the breakout role for Zach Galifianakis. Bradley Cooper kind of put him on another level because he's the leading man, basically, in it, even though he does go through a lot of shenanigans as well. He's mostly the straight character. Ed Helms kind of introduced everybody to him if you weren't familiar with The Daily Show. And I think he might have been on The Office by then. I don't remember, but it just introduced you to these guys that are really funny and still working today. And I think what was important about this movie when we talk about this category of film is it was kind of, I won't say dead in the water, but it was a genre that wasn't really rocking at this time when this movie came out. Because even Step Brothers the year before didn't do great box office. Us as fans loved the movie, but it wasn't a great box office success. Where Hangover blew up, rated R, lots of money. Everybody saw it. Everybody loved it. Like you said, spawned 2 mediocre sequels, but still, it's a franchise. It brought that type of comedy back for a while, and we haven't seen it again probably in the last 5 years or so, like at this high of a level. But it did something more than just be funny, and it just kind of started a comedy renaissance when you think about it in the bro comedy movies. That it comes and it ebbs and flows throughout history. So,
and when you're talking about bro comedies, like you can go back to 2003's Old School. Anchorman was at 2004.
Yep, 04. Yep.
And this movie's coming in 4 or 5 years after the real hot time for these things.
Yes.
And like I said, it kind of just reinvigorated, gave it a kick in the pants. And I mean, financially, I think all 3 movies made quite a bit of money.
Yes.
But obviously the first one was just off the charts.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so moving on. We're gonna stay in 2009. Another movie that I thought was very funny and hilarious. It is called I Love You, Man. And it stars Paul Rudd and Jason Segel and Rashida Jones, Andy Samberg, J.K. Simmons. Just a great, funny cast. Jon Favreau, Jamie Presley. Jane Curtin is the mother of Paul Rudd's character. It's directed by John Hamburg. This movie, when it came out, it was one of those things that, is it going to work? Is it just going to be another comedy that's going to, come out and it's going to fizzle? No one's going to go see it. And it was a hit, and for a good reason, because it's hilarious. And this movie is the definition of bromance. It's Paul Rudd's character, which is Peter, is marrying Zoe, played by Rashida Jones, and he has no friends. And so when they decide to get engaged, he has to come up with people to be on his side, be his groomsmen, and he doesn't even have a best man. So he sets out basically in a first date type scenario, very rom-com type setup to find his best man. And that leads him on some very weird man dates. And some very funny things happen. Thomas Lennon is in this movie, and he has a very funny date with Paul Rudd's character. It's a really funny movie. Jon Favreau is hilarious in this. He's very mean, which is fun. So then he meets someone. He goes on these dates because he gets set up with Jon Favreau's friends too, and that doesn't work out. He meets Jason Segel's character Sydney, and they kind of hit it off. Sydney also, like, all his friends are married and have kids, so he doesn't really have friends to really hang out with anymore. So he looks at Peter as like his kind of outlet, and they start hanging out. They become really good friends. They hang out with Lou Ferrigno on occasion, or run into him anyway, because Peter's selling Lou Ferrigno's mansion for like millions of dollars. It's a really fun comedy, and it's very funny. All the performances are great. There's a lot of improvising in it, which really, this style of movie, it's an Apatow style of film, even though he didn't direct it, I would say, with a lot of his actors in it. Andy Samberg is very funny as his out homosexual brother, who's trying to help him find friends as well. Yeah, just a really good movie. Anybody that hasn't seen it, I can't believe you haven't seen it, because it's that good. And I think when I saw it, I took my now wife, Rebecca, to go see it, and she is always skeptical of comedies for some reason. I don't know why. She usually laughs her ass off, though. And this was no different. And we had a really good time with this one. It was a great date movie. It's a great, just regular comedy to watch whenever you want. There are some awkward comedy moments, which sometimes make me cringe, but they're still fun. And Paul Rudd plays that awkward comedy perfectly. That's why he's cast to play that role quite often. Definitely a good movie worth checking out.
Slap of the bass, Jobin.
Slap of the bass.
Slap of the bass. All right. I love you, man, as well. Fantastic movie. I am going to take it back 10 years further to 1999. American Pie, directed by Paul Weitz. The stars Jason Biggs, Chris Klein, Thomas Ian Nichols, Sean William Scott, Eddie K. Thomas, Eugene Levy, Jennifer Coolidge, Tara Reid, Mina Savari, and the gorgeous Shannon Elizabeth. Again, this is one of the coming-of-age movies that came out when we were coming of age. I believe I was 17 at the time, if I did the math correctly, so I was able to see it in theaters opening day. And there's a lot of just talking about this movie because it was super hyped. And it's like, wow, I'm not 17 yet, and I don't want my parents to know I'm going to see it. How am I going to get into this movie? It's like, suckers. But yeah, I just remember the hype going into this and seeing it. And, as a 17-year-old kid, I was like, holy cow, this has everything. Of course, we remember the Shannon Elizabeth webcam scene, which now is pretty,
tame. It's tame in comparison to what we've seen
when
these
you think
days.
about that happening in high school, it's not really a comedy anymore. And,
yeah.
When you stop and think, it's like, oh, that is super bad. Super bad. See what I did there? Yeah. But yeah, Blink 182 makes a cameo in there when everybody's watching. The whole school is watching the webcam incident, and just when you think, bros on a mission to lose their virginity on prom night. Obviously, we know why it's called American Pie, because there's an incident with a pie, and it is violated. Jason Biggs is, I guess, pretty much the center of the story. Chris Klein's character and Eddie K. Thomas and Thomas Ian Nichols, they're like the group of four. And Stifler is kind of he's a bully-ish character, but I guess he's just one of the guys, the jocks. And it's interesting because there's not a lot of, when you think about high school, right? You think of you think about your cliques, those how many you see these high school teen movies. You got your nerds, you got your jocks, you got your wastoids, you got your burnouts. Quoting Ferris Bueller here, but this one just kind of like everybody sort of kind of gets along and shows up at the same parties, and there's no real troubles, whatnot. It's just I'm going off on a tangent, and I've kind of just lost what I said, so I'm going to stop, pump the brakes on that, and just finish it off with MILF. John Cho and of Harold Kumar movies. I forget who the other person is.
He's not. Yeah, he hasn't done a lot lately. So yeah.
Just throwing a bone out to him, but Eugene Levy really makes this movie for me. He is Jim's father. Jason Biggs' character's name is Jim, and Eugene Levy is just this. I'm going to throw it to you because I'm failing to come up with the right words to describe.
Well, Eugene Levy is the glue to this franchise, and he's definitely one of the funnier parts from the original because he's the fumbling dad trying to explain sex to his teenage son who already pretty much knows about it. So it's a very funny, awkward, again, that awkward comedy that makes you feel uneasy at times. And he has kind of, like I said, he's held this franchise together. He's been in, I believe there's a new one that just came out I've never even heard of, but I'm not sure if he's in that one. But up until then, he's been the only one that's been in all of them. But he is really a center part of this movie. He's kind of the heart of American Pie. He kind of makes Jim realize that it's not all about just, having sex. It's about finding someone that you actually care about. Whether it's not, you got to get married to this woman, but it's just being with someone that you care about. And I think also what's funny in this franchise too is he's just credited as Jim's dad. I'm pretty sure they never give him a name. And maybe in the fourth one they do. I can't remember. They probably do, but
yeah, I'm looking at 10 spin-offs because we've got the two American Pies, 1 and 2. And then we've got American Wedding, and we've got American Reunion. That's
the 4 for the main cast, yep.
Right. And then there are another 6 spin-off movies. You've got American Pie, The Naked Mile in 2006. American Pie Presents Band Camp. Oh, I forgot to mention Allison Hannigan's character.
Yes.
And the infamous This One Time at Band Camp?
Yes.
Because anytime anybody says, this one time,
yeah,
it's usually immediately followed at Band Camp.
At Band Camp?
So, and then you've got American Pie, Beta House, 2007, American Pie, Book of Love, 2009, and then something listed as American Pie 5, but it doesn't look like any of the original cast is signed on to it at the moment. So,
yeah,
we shall see.
Who knows? It's a lot of mediocre sequels in that one too. I don't mind 2, 3, and 4, but all the Naked Mile and Beta House, those are pretty useless.
Those are direct to DVD or direct to
the VOD, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, American Pie, it's a franchise. I think most people have seen it. You should watch it if you haven't, because they're pretty funny. And the first one especially. Yeah, it's an experience. But you're right. Experiencing it in the theaters, I think, was something that other generations won't have with that movie. And it's not Citizen Kane or anything, so don't get me you got to see it in the theaters. But you're right. It was being a teenager, watching a movie about being a teenager at that time that made that movie special. Right. I'm sure kids today that are teenagers watching a movie now made for teenagers feel the same way that we did back then. So just, if you're younger, think of it like that. There's probably a movie you saw as a teenager that you will only think of it in the loving way that you do because you were a teenager. All right, so moving on to my number 2. It's a little bit, I think, lesser known, but it came out around the same time. It was 1998, and it's Dead Man on Campus. It is directed by Alan Cohn. It stars Tom Everett Scott, Mark Paul Gosselaar, Poppy Montgomery, Lachlan Monroe, Allison Hannigan as well. She's one of the girls in the movie. It actually has Jason Segel. So we have a repeat of Jason Segel and Allison Hannigan, who would eventually play husband and wife in How I Met Your Mother. So they are both in this movie. And Linda Cardellini as well is in this movie. She plays the girl that Jason Segel falls for. So Dead Man on Campus, just to explain if people aren't familiar with it, it's a movie about Tom Everett Scott's character, and he plays Josh. And he's going off to college for the first time, and his roommate is Mark Paul Gosselaar, who plays Cooper. And they have another roommate, Jason Segel, who's just a nut job named Kyle. Very sexually frustrated, but he's a psycho, loves heavy metal music. It's pretty crazy. And so Tom Everett Scott and Mark Paul Gosselaar are not quick friends. They kind of hate each other at first. Mark Paul Gosselaar's character, Cooper, he really doesn't care about college. He just wants to party and be with girls, and that's it. Tom Everett Scott's really trying really hard, but then finally they become friends. Cooper gets Josh to come out and start drinking. His grades start falling behind. They start failing their classes, and they're worried about getting kicked out and their parents finding out. So they come up with this plan. There's this rule in the book that if one of your roommates kills himself, you get A's for the semester. And so it's a dark comedy, obviously. So they lose Kyle as their roommate because he goes to live with his girlfriend like off campus. So they have to replace that roommate. So they start looking, and it's a very dark movie. So if you can't handle things about suicide and stuff like that, they start looking for someone who's suicidal. And they want to move them into their room, and then they want to be able to get grades, obviously get good grades. Obviously, it's something that the characters wrestle with because you could help this person, but they're really not trying to do that. They're trying to benefit from someone else's pain. And that's why most of the bad things happen to them, which is why it's funny. They keep screwing up. The plans don't go the way they're supposed to. They find this depressed rock star, and I'm using air quotes if you can't see me, since you can't see me. And he is not really depressed. It's all an act. He's pretending to be like he's part of the Cure, but he loves like bubblegum pop music. And so it's like when they hear him like singing in the shower, they're like, "You're not depressed. What's going on?" And so it's like this long journey of kind of like finding yourself in college. And when they come to realize that like what they were doing was wrong, I'm not going to spoil it just because, like I said, I know it's not very popular, but it's very funny. It's a movie that's always resonated with me. I've always liked dark comedies. It's probably one of the few early ones. It's not always recognized as a dark comedy, but again, it deals with suicide, which is pretty dark. So it's pretty, that alone makes it a dark comedy. It's another one I watch like, going to bed and stuff like that. It's a fun movie. It's funny to see Mark Paul Gosselaar in a role, not being Zach Morris, especially back in this time because that's what he was known for. Yeah, it's just a really funny movie. Lachlan Monroe is really good in it. He's really funny. He's been in a bunch of horror movies and a bunch of comedies. He plays a crazy guy who isn't really suicidal, but he's so crazy that they think he's just going to end up killing himself. So they try to move him into their room at one point. And his name's Cliff, and he ends up going missing. And then, like, being found by the end of the movie, like, on a cruise ship or something. Somebody shows up at the end. It's really funny. So, yeah, if you like goofball comedies with a little darkness to them, definitely recommend checking out Dead Man on Campus.
All right, that leads me to my third and final Bromance movie. And I'm going with the 1996 film Swingers, directed by Doug Liman, written and starring Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn, Ron Livingston. If you don't know that name, if you are familiar with Office Space, he played the lead there. He's been in some other stuff, but Ron Livingston is actually one of those guys that I thought was actually going to, be a big movie star, and it kind of didn't really go that way for him. So these guys are actors who move out to Hollywood and are trying to make it big, and they are struggling, to say the least. They hang out with a couple of guys, a boy named Sue, starring Patrick Van Horn, and their other friend is Charles, played by Alex Dessert. Heather Grant makes an appearance again as Jon Favreau's love interest.
Second appearance of Jon Favreau, too.
Indeed. Well, that goes without saying.
Yes.
It's Jon Favreau. But yeah, Jon Favreau's character, Mike, is the centerpiece of this movie. He is depressed over the breakup of a long-distance girlfriend. He's down in the dumps and just doesn't want to do anything, sits in his apartment. Vince Vaughn is the quintessential Vince Vaughn character in this, a very young, outgoing, well, not so young anymore, right? There's one scene where he's like, I auditioned for Big Brother, and the director said that I nailed it. And then but then I didn't get it because Big Brother is 12. How am I going to play 12, man? I've got range, but obviously that's just a interpretation of how I remember that scene going.
Yes.
A lot of fast talk, a lot of talking about the beautiful babies, Mike. Like the beautiful babies. We're going to go out there and we're going to wine them and we're going to dine them and we're going to make things happen.
Very Vince Vaughn. If you don't like Vince Vaughn, probably don't watch this movie because it's Vince Vaughn to a T.
And when you think of the title Swingers, get your minds out of the gutter. It's about swing dancing.
Yes. Yeah. Sickos.
Mike meets Heather Graham's character named Lorraine at a swing dance bar playing it was that 1940s.
Yeah.
Zoot suit riot, throw back a bottle of beer. Anyway, sorry for ruining your ears there, all. But yeah, this is a great bro movie where guys are wandering around trying to make their careers happen, going out, trying to pick up women, and it's, like, it's got some heart to it, because Vince Vaughn's character truly does care about Mike, as does Ron Livingston. They're trying to do different things to get him out of his funk. They take him golfing. Early on in the film, Vince Vaughn's character takes Jon Favreau's character to Vegas. Because they live in Los Angeles, I think it's only a 3.5, 4-hour drive. So, they're going, Vegas, baby, Vegas! And it's funny, as they're driving, they lose their excitement. It's the middle of the night, it's starting to wind down. They finally get to Vegas, and, they're going to spend, what do they think the limit was? I got $300 and I don't want to spend it. They walk up to the first blackjack table, and Mike ends up losing $200 on one hand. It's just, they end up at, like, the 25-cent tables, and they're playing with some of the elderly, and there's some bikers at the table, and the old lady wins, and she gets comped breakfast, and they're just looking at each other like, really? It's stuff like this that just makes the movie for me. The one-liners, the music is actually really good. I mean, you'd think that if you think it's not your cup of tea, give it a listen, give it a watch. It'll get stuck in your head. It'll be intoxicating. Trust me, it's huge. I know what I'm talking about. But yeah, 1996 Swingers, underrated movie. Give it a watch.
Definitely something people should check out. When I first saw that movie, I wasn't a fan. I probably saw it like in 96 when it came out. I think my brother-in-law, not my brother-in-law at the time, but my sister's boyfriend or friend, whatever he was at that time, I don't remember. He watched it and they loved it, and I'm like, I just don't get it. And then probably like 2 years later, when I was like 16, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, it was really good, and it's really funny. Vince Vaughn is fantastic in this movie. Jon Favreau is great. Everybody does a really good job. Doug Liman, it's one of his earliest movies that he did. It might even be his first one. I'm not looking that up at the moment, so I don't know. Just a great movie overall. Definitely Swingers, one of the better bromance movies probably out there when you're just talking pure quality of film. All right, so I'm going to run down some honorable mentions first before I get to my third one, and then we do a little special before the review. Dumb and Dumber, Wayne's World, Biodome, Role Models, 21 Jump Street, Step Brothers, Animal House, Wedding Crashers, The Internship, the unrated version. Because the unrated version is hilarious. If you haven't seen Internship unrated, definitely watch it. Old School, as Wayne mentioned. PCU is another one. Dude, Where's My Car? I'm not a huge fan of this movie, but it kind of fits into what we're going to be talking about in like 5-10 minutes. So it definitely deserves to be mentioned because it was definitely spawned because of the movies we're going to refer to. And then so that leads me to my next one and my last one, and it's Very Bad Things. Very Bad Things is a movie. It's a dark comedy. We're staying in the 90s. These last four, we've been in the 90s. That was not planned. That's where we're staying, though. And it's Peter Berg, the actor turned director's directorial debut feature film. And it's before he went and started doing all these big action flicks, he did a little-known dark comedy called Very Bad Things. It stars, once again, Jon Favreau. He plays Kyle Fisher. Leland Orser plays Charles Moore. Cameron Diaz, Laura Garrity, who is the fiance of Jon Favreau's character. Christian Slater plays Robert Boyd. Jeremy Piven plays Michael Burkow. Daniel Stern plays Adam Burkow. They're brothers. And it starts, so it's a bachelor party. You have 5 friends. One of them's getting married. They have a bachelor party. They hire a stripper. They're having sex with the stripper because apparently that's what happens in this movie. It's very dark. And the stripper accidentally dies. And instead of calling the cops, they decide that they're going to try to cover it up. And mainly that comes from Christian Slater's character, Boyd, who is kind of the psycho of the group. Robert Boyd, but they call him Boyd throughout most of the movie. And he has this plan that they're going to take the body to the desert, they're going to bury it. Well, then a cop comes in. The cop comes in, they got to take care of him. I think it's Boyd, but someone jumps on his back and starts stabbing him with a wine opener and kills him, and he dies. So now they have a cop and they have a stripper, and they have to bury both their bodies. And it unravels from there. They actually get this done. They bury the bodies and they move on. But then the movie really kind of starts from there because then you have Jeremy Piven and Daniel Stern's characters, they're brothers, and they're both, one of them's going crazy in the direction of, oh my god, I can't believe we just did this, and that's Daniel Stern's character. The other one's going crazy, and they're like, oh my god, we're gonna get caught, and that's Jeremy Piven's character, and he's the one doing a lot of coke. So you can't really trust either one of them. They start turning on each other. The major foe is Christian Slater in this, kind of reminiscent of his Heather's character, very much the foil to Jon Favreau's character, who's trying to just make it to his wedding alive, and Cameron Diaz's character is not very nice in this movie. They very much have her play a very shrill fiance, very bridezilla. So whether that was right or wrong at the time, it's just kind of what they did. And again, it's a very dark comedy, so it may not fit with a lot of people today. I was one of two people that when I went and saw the group of friends, being my sister's friends, that liked this movie. Everybody else hated it. So me and my one buddy, it was I think Timmy. Him and I, we loved this movie. Everybody else hated it. It kind of started me. It was one that didn't start me. It was one of those movies that kept my love of dark comedy going. It's so good. It's so violent. It's crazy how everything happens. And I don't want to give, I know it's 20 plus years old at this point. I still don't want to give it away because I think it's still a movie people can discover and enjoy. And the cast is fantastic. Christian Slater, like I said, is great. Jon Favreau is really good. It was a more starring role for him, even more than Swingers, because as we talked about, Vince Vaughn kind of takes over that movie. And this one came 2 years after that. So this was a nice way for him to show his ability as an actor until he decided to jump behind the camera a few years later and show us all that he's actually a really good director. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies I'm not going to recommend to everybody, but if you like dark humor and movies going to dark places, I already told you how the movie starts. That's a good indication of what kind of movie we're talking about here.
Here's my question for you, sir. Have you seen 2017 Rough Night?
Yeah.
See some similarities between that movie and the movie you just talked about?
Rough Night, isn't that the
obviously that stars your girl.
Yeah, it's the Scarlett,
Kate McKinnon.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it is. You're right. I forgot that someone actually accidentally ends up dying in that. I forgot about that part. Definitely. The Rough Night it's a decent female version. I don't like calling it that because it's not really a remake of it, but it does follow a lot of the same beats. But yeah, no, it's not bad, and yeah, that's definitely a good comparison, I think. So
I just like drawing comparisons, and that's
for sure.
popped in my head when I'm hearing you listen. I'm hearing Kate McKinnon with a terrible Australian accent going, no. Actually, I can't even do an Australian accent.
No, you can't.
That's what immediately pops in my head. So,
but that's funny. Yeah, I honestly, and I think when I watched Rough Night, I probably didn't even think of that, but that probably makes me like that movie even more because I love Very Bad Things so much. So yeah, I mean, again, there's a good comparison. If you liked Rough Night, watch Very Bad Things. It's basically the male version of that, and you'll probably like it. So, all right. So moving on, before we get to our review, we're going to talk... Our most excellent review, not bogus at all. We're going to talk about two films that led to the next movie. And basically started the whole bromance, BroDude movie genre. And that is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. It all started in 1989 in San Dimas, California.
San Dimas.
When Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan, two best friends, part of the band Wild Stallions, had a history test to do. And they were good kids. They were nice kids. They liked people. People liked them, I think, but they were kind of dumb.
Whoa.
And they didn't know what to do. And then they find out as a man named Rufus comes from the future and tells them that they need to get this history exam done in order to save the world, essentially.
Yes.
For
Mr.
mankind.
Ryan, the history teacher played by the ever-talented Bernie Casey.
Yes.
Just minor, but just fantastic.
A great role for him. It really, yes. Very... what he has to deal with them in character, I can't even imagine.
You thought that Caesar was a salad-dressing dude. Your report better be something very...
So, obviously... Bill and Ted at this point have become part of the history of film, so people know who they are. Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter play Bill and Ted. George Carlin, Rufus.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, George. We miss you. And these two idiots, lovable dudes, have to go and travel through time to get their history report done in a timely fashion so that they could move on to save the world later, which is what you'll find out in the following movie that we'll get to in a second. This movie, I've watched it recently. It still holds up. It's still hilarious. It's stupid. My wife hates these movies. She saw me while I showed Donovan Excellent Adventure, and she's like, "Why are you showing him this movie? I can't. I don't." She would just listen to him talk and be like, "I can't even right now." I'm like, "I'm sorry." So if you're a fan of these movies, then you'll know what I'm talking about. They've become part of your dialogue, words that you say you can't say without saying it like them, and it's just really, they kind of ingrained themselves in our minds when we were younger. This was what we had growing up, you and me, Wayne, and I think it still holds true. And then what they did 2 years later with Bogus Journey, to go in a completely different direction for a sequel, which is something kind of unheard of. Not many movies did that back then. Gremlins was one of the first ones to do it with their sequel. This one followed that. And it was like, no, we don't want to make another ripoff. We want to do something different. So we're going to kill them. So in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Bill and Ted die. And they not only do they die, but they go to hell. Even though they weren't really bad people, that's where they end up. And then they have to fight their way through hell to get back to Earth to kill the evil robot us's, so that the good robot us's can then be built by or the good robot us's, this is how the movie kind of sounds. The good robot us's have to be built by Station, so that they can beat the bad robot us's, and then we could save the princesses. That's basically how they deliver those lines in that movie.
Yeah. William Sadler as Death, the Grim Reaper, though, really just
Sadler as he's the new character in that movie for the most part, and he's fantastic. He plays Death, and it's awesome. And Rufus returns as well, and more of a minor role because it's basically Pam Grier in that role until the end when it's revealed that Pam Grier all along was Rufus. Spoiler alert. Because Rufus was in hiding because his old classmate, played by the great South African from Lethal Weapon 2, I forget his name at the moment. He was fantastic as the main villain, though, in this movie. Definitely a weird follow-up to the first movie, and I remember when the second one came out specifically, like dressing up with my friends as Bill and Ted and like being that, like just around the house, like trying to be Bill and Ted. Because that's how much these movies, it really had touched me, I guess, as a young child. And it stuck with me, like I said, all this time. And they're just, again, we all know they're dumb. So when people say that, oh, it's dumb. Okay, we'll come up with something else original, because we all know that they're dumb. They're supposed to be dumb. The characters are kind of dumb. Joss Ackland, by the way, was the villain. He plays Denomulus. I don't even remember that being his name. But anyway, yeah, William Sadler as the Grim Reaper / Death really steals the show, especially when they Melvin him in the middle of the desert.
Melvin!
We just Melvin Death!
Excellent!
So you can tell me and Wayne, we love these movies. So this will lead us into our review of the week.
Da, 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 da.
Bill and Ted Face the Music. Directed by Dean Parasite. Parasite, is that how you say it?
I don't know. I'm just reading it phonetically. Dean, if we messed up your name, I apologize. Come on the show and let's talk it out.
Yes, Dean, please come on the show. So Dean Parasite, director of Galaxy Quest, another underrated comedy from the 90s, directs Bill and Ted Face the Music, starring Keanu Reeves as Ted, Alex Winter as Bill, Kristen Shaw as Kelly, Samara Weaving, who I love, as Thea, Bridget Lundy Payne as Billy, who's great on Atypical. If you haven't watched the show on Netflix, do it now. William Sadler as Death, Anthony Kerrigan as Dennis Caleb McCoy. Dennis is fantastic in this movie.
Here and out is known as Jar Jar Dennis.
Aaron Hayes and Jayma Mays replace the original princesses. They play Elizabeth and Joanna. They're very funny in this movie. Beck Bennett plays Deacon. Kid Cudi as Kid Cudi. is fantastic. And right now, I will use this time to say Kid Cudi should get a Best Supporting Oscar for playing Kid Cudi, because no one could have done it better. And Bill and Ted Go to the Oscars would be a great follow-up to this movie.
Excellent.
So we get Bill and Ted years later. It's 30 years later, and they still haven't saved the world. And they get a visit from the future. Unfortunately, Rufus has passed away. They meet Kelly, who is Rufus's daughter, played by the lovely Kristen Shaw. And then they have to go meet with the new overlords, the new leaders, and they tell them to have like 17 hours to save the world, to write the song to save the world.
Yes, unites and saves the world.
Yes. And so then it's kind of a mixture of 1 and 2 from this point on. I mean, it is its own movie, which I like about it, but obviously there's doing this kind of movie 30 years later, because they haven't been keeping up with it, you kind of have to have that nostalgia overload. So they do that. They go back and forth with the...
While he's looking that up, I'm just going to chime in with some stuff that I love. Early in the movie, they get transported to the future, and there is a nod to George Carlin's Rufus character as a hologram. He pops up for like maybe 5 seconds, and it was just a nice little nod to acknowledge George Carlin's role in this franchise. And
yes,
I don't know. I had a moment. I was like, oh, good. They acknowledged him.
So they, as I was saying, they go like back and forth, traveling through time, and the trying to go further into the future to figure out how to write the best song ever written, or the song that unites the world. And they spend a lot of time trying to figure it out as best they can. And what I love about this movie to start with, so that's the premise. They're trying to save the future. The first 10 minutes of this movie had me giggling, laughing, just uncontrollably, because I was watching two of my idols 30 years later back on the screen again. It was hard to control my laughter. I was so giddy. I was like, oh my God, like they're back. And it just opens with playing a Deacon's wedding, which marrying Missy was a great tie-in to like having Deacon now be the one that's marrying Missy, when it was originally Bill's dad, and then it was Ted's dad, and now in the third one it's Deacon, Ted's brother. That just was great, and it was great to see Ted's dad as well, basically being the same character, same prickly father he was years ago. Does it well great here, and has a great kind of turnabout as well.
I know how to spell Lincoln. We found your keys. If you want them, better come down to the station to get them.
That's a little snippet from Bogus Journey, if you're not familiar.
Actually, that's from Excellent Adventure.
Is it Excellent Adventure?
Yeah, because that's how Bill gets Ted away from...
I'm thinking of Bogus Journey when they... you're right. I'm thinking of Bogus Journey when they possess the dads.
Yes, okay.
When they possess his dad and his partner. And they're like, my son Ted and his friend Bill have been killed. You gotta go solve their murders. This isn't working, dude.
Here's my question for you. We talked about how excited we were that the daughters were going to be dumb.
Yes.
How do you feel now that you've seen that movie, the film? Here's my thing. I was amazed at Bridget Lundy Payne, the way she was able to capture Ted in his little tics and nuances in delivery.
Yes.
I thought she was phenomenal. Not to say that Samara Weaving didn't also rock it as Lady Bill.
Yes.
But both of these actresses just phenomenal.
They were really good. Yes, and they're not dumb, really. They're kind of like idiot savants. Like they're like music masters because their fathers were in a shitty band for many years. They decided to actually study music and like became really smart at it and really good at it. I thought that was a really cool twist to it.
Yes.
That even though like they still had their father's, what's the right word? Their delivery. They talked and acted like them, but they were a lot smarter than them. I like how they played that, and I thought it was very good. And we've talked about on the show about Samara Weaving. She's one of my favorites working right now. A lot of good movies that she's been in, and this is just follows in another one. This movie just it's a feel-good, fun comedy that you don't have to think about. It's a lot of fun. It's great nostalgia if you're a fan of the original films, and everybody delivers. I mean, it's kind of weird to see Keanu go back to such like bad acting again, but that's what this role needs. Like, it doesn't need him to be John Wick or when he gave like his best performance in The Gift or Constantine or anything. Like, it needs him to be Ted again. And like he seamlessly almost steps back into that role. And Bill, it's great to see Alex Winter. He does a lot of behind the scenes stuff these days. He directed that documentary I talked to you about on HBO, and he produces a lot of movies and stuff. So it was great to see him on screen again. I wish we could have seen it on the big screen. I think that would have been special. But to just have a Bill and Ted movie in 2020 brings a bright spot in 2020, because 2020 for most people has sucked, and Wayne and I have other reasons for it sucking. But this was a nice bright spot. I think it was just something that was needed right now, and I think it hit all those moments for me. I think some people are judging it too harshly on it being like expecting it to be a better movie than it needed to be. You know what I mean? Like critics loved it, but when I read some of the audience reviews, like, oh, like I just couldn't get through. Like, what kind of movie? It's like, have you not seen the originals? Like, it's exactly the same type of style to those movies. So if you like the originals, I can't see why you wouldn't like this movie.
Most of the negative reviews I've seen are for people who are way younger than the original movies or have never actually seen them.
Yeah.
Or they saw them, after their heyday.
And that's okay. You could think the movies are okay. You could think they're rubbish. That's fine. But understand, like, this movie was made for a certain type of person, and that was people like us who grew up on these movies and have a love for these characters, because these characters, they're never really bad characters. They really don't go through those things where it's like you hate them for a little bit. Like, they're really just good, kind-hearted, loving characters for all three movies. And it's just great to see them back again. And I'm not saying we need another one, because we probably don't, but I wouldn't be upset with another one. Yeah, I mean, for me, this movie hit everything I wanted it to.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, if you like these movies, then I definitely say watch it. For me, it's 4 out of 5, close to a 5 out of 5, because it brought back so much memories and so much love of these characters that I think it was something I was looking for, especially this year, and it was very fun to see, I think.
Yep, 4.5 out of 5 for me. Basically, because I don't believe in perfection, nothing's getting a 5 out of 5 anymore. But I loved the interaction with themselves in different points in time.
Yes.
Especially at the cameo of the famous musician that plays himself, very briefly. I'm not going to say anything because I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a musician that I love. A rock and roll legend, at least in my eyes. Mm-hmm. And just the way that they meet themselves, like just throughout the different points in the future, I should say. I loved it. It was great. It made me chuckle. It made me giddy.
Well, yeah, when they were in prison, that was pretty hilarious. Lots of good moments. Lots of good moments in this movie. Lots to talk about. I think, on repeat viewings, there'll be quotes and stuff that come out of it, just like out of the originals. So definitely recommend checking it out. You could rent or buy it right now. It's like $20 to rent it. So I just bought it for $5 more. To me, it was well worth it. Check it out. Bill and Ted, Face the Music. So now we move on to one of the more somber parts of our show, and it's a little extra somber this time because we lost someone recently who was very young, very much making a name for himself in the movie industry. And I will, before we get into that, Peter Olcasi from Killer Clowns from Outer Space, he passed away as well. Very sad. I love that movie. But Chadwick Boseman passed away at the young age of 43 this last week. He was just on the rise, I think. I mean, over the last 5-6 years or so, since 42, which was in 2013. So over the last 7 years, his career has really taken off. And it was such a sad story and a shocking turn of events to see on August 28th. Rebecca was on her phone and she was on Twitter and she's like, wait, is this real? And she showed me a post and it said Black Panther star dead at 43. So immediately I started, Google searching, going to Facebook, trying to find out. And unfortunately it was true. We found out that the last 4 years of his life, he's been battling stage 3 and stage 4 colon cancer. Started at stage 3, went to stage 4, and unfortunately he lost his life because of it. And he kept it private, which, something I can respect. And I think a lot of actors do. Alan Rickman did that. Kelly Preston, who just recently passed away this year, she did that as well. respect their wishes. Looking back on his performances over the last 4 years, it's just crazy to think what he'd been going through to do those movies. To do 21 Bridges, which an action cop film where he's running around all the time. To do Black Panther, where so much just jumping around and running, and apparently he did a lot of his own stunts in that movie. Obviously, there's some things he didn't do, and they use CGI for some stuff, but a lot of the stuff that he felt he could do, he did. Just the Five Bloods, which I talked about in the last podcast, and it may have not have been like an action heavy movie, but you could tell that it was something that it was probably hard for him to get through, and that was one of the last movies he made. And it just goes to show like how far he went to make sure that people didn't know about it. As Clark Peters recently came out because he feels horrible because on set he had Chadwick Boseman had someone massaging his feet and massaging his back and giving him pills and stuff, and he's like, oh, he looks soft. He looks like a pampered star. And then obviously to find out that he was dying and Clark Peters didn't know that, he felt really bad, obviously. So it's another one of those stories too. Don't judge people just by what you see. You never know what anyone's dealing with. And it's such a huge loss, not just for the Marvel Universe. Obviously, people are wondering with Black Panther what's going to happen. It's just a huge loss as a person standpoint because it seems like he was a really nice person. He wanted to give back, so he went to met with a lot of cancer patients, which is something that a lot of these actors do, and a lot of times they don't talk about it because they don't want it to be a publicity stunt. And it's something that mainly just came out afterwards. I mean, I think there was one piece about it like 2 years ago when Black Panther came out. But obviously we now know why he was doing that. I mean, he was doing it because he's a good person. But it probably hit closer to home to him than a lot of other people that do it. And it's just unfortunate that, we're not going to get to see any more from this young man. He was just getting his career going. And yeah, I mean, it's very sad. Very sad. It hit me pretty hard. It wasn't, I wasn't crying or anything, but it just as being a fan of the MCU and having watched him grow into that role the last couple of years, it's just sad to know that we're not going to get to see him play T'Challa anymore.
And just what he meant to the African American community, and giving people, who don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't really feel like I have the proper right to say anything in regards to the situation, but just from how people, just thanked him for his role and giving, young boys and girls the opportunity to feel like they could be royalty too.
Yes.
I'm referencing what people said to a poster of him while doing a Jimmy Kimmel performance back when Black Panther came out, and then he would come out and surprise them and how emotional people got thanking him for inspiration. I mean, but aside from MCU, which I loved him in, he portrayed James Brown in the biopic Get On Up in 2014.
Yep.
Played Vontae Mack in Draft Day 2014. I hate this movie because
it's a bad movie, but it's a good, fun movie to watch. But it's not a good movie. I'm with you on that. I love watching that movie.
Yep. So,
and he's great in it.
Yeah, he is just fantastic because he plays a troubled young man who is trying to overcome a mistake and prove to people like these NFL scouts and general managers that he has worth and the ability to perform. And what really hits home for me is that he has been battling this he was passed away at 43, and he's been battling this for 4 years. That's like our age right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
Like 2 years older than you are right now. A year older than me when he was diagnosed. So it's like, oh wow, it's like,
yeah.
If you think something's wrong, I mean, it's just like
go get checked out. Yeah.
Yep. And especially with colon cancer, it's a big killer out there. And,
yeah.
A lot of men especially are, I don't want to go and have that procedure done and get checked. It's like it's not. Just, your life is so much more valuable, and
yes,
it's just another way that Chadwick Boseman kind of inspires me and just motivates me to do something. Just everything that he's done, even in death, and just I don't know if I'm really hammering home the point I'm trying to make. It's just
I think you are.
Yeah, it's just it's a loss.
Yeah, it's a big loss.
Such a loss.
It's a loss, and it again, like I said, it's always hard when you see these guys finally starting to hit their stride movie-wise, and then they're just gone. And, I feel like with someone like him, we were just starting to see, especially after seeing Da 5 Bloods, we were just starting to see his rise. And it's unfortunate that it got cut short, but I think he's left us with some great performances and some great movies like 42, where he plays Jackie Robinson. And it's such a good movie, and it's unfortunate, too. I mean, he passed away on Jackie Robinson Day, which was, I know a lot of people brought that up because, obviously, he played Jackie Robinson. And that's the thing, too, is, like, not only was he big for playing the Black Panther, but he played Jackie Robinson, he played James Brown, and he played Thurgood Marshall as well. So just a lot of characters, big characters, that were a big personality. And I feel like people didn't talk about him as much, and maybe they should have. And I think they'll talk about him more. He does have one more movie coming out, directed by Denzel Washington, called Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It's based off a book or a play, I think. Him and Viola Davis. It's supposed to be really good. It'll hit Netflix later this year in time for Oscar season. So maybe he'll get some recognition this year, which would be nice. I'm sure the Oscars will do a nice thing for him as well.
Right. Looking forward to that movie, just with the names attached to it.
Yeah.
I can't see it not being fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see.
So I mean,
here's a question before we move on, and by no means am I trying to rush or anything.
Sure.
What do you think they should do with the T'Challa character now?
I think
immortalize it, or do you think they should have somebody come back on and?
I've heard a couple things of they should let it go, or they should. The one I like the most is making Shuri the Black Panther.
Yes. I
think that would be the right way to go because it would fit in line with the movie series because she's the next in line, and she's already a character in this universe. She's been in multiple movies. It's going to be difficult, I think. It's probably going to, if they decide to stay with this franchise, it'll push the movie back. I hope they don't recast him. I would think in the MCU, I think he should be the last T'Challa, even though we only got a couple movies out of him. He was very overpowering throughout the franchise. And I think his presence, if you do it right, you can make his presence felt through the next couple movies of the Black Panther series. I've heard some people say, cast Michael B. Jordan. I don't really like that. His character's dead. I love Michael B. Jordan, don't get me wrong. But I think the right thing to do would either not do it anymore or have Shuri become the Black Panther. Those are my two options.
I like having Shuri take up the mantle.
Yeah.
As long as they explain the passing and the passing of the title along. So
exactly.
I'm curious. I wanted to get your input on that one because I feel the same way. Like,
now,
if they're not going to do it, then they need to just reboot and go in a different direction.
Yes, and I believe in the comics, Shuri does become Black Panther at one point. So there is a story for that to happen. How they would, write him out, I don't know. If they just make him, pass because of some sickness without really talking about it, or however they're going to handle it. I hope they don't do any of the CGI work because that would be really, I think, disrespectful at this point since they haven't filmed it. It's not like Paul Walker when they were filming Furious 7, he passed away. They haven't started filming Black Panther 2 yet, so I hope they don't do, a nice tribute a la George Carlin from Bill and Ted Face the Music would be something I would be okay with. Him in the ghost world. That would be something that would be fine. A great tribute, I think. But yeah, again, just a big loss. It's just sad. Chadwick, we hope you're resting in peace, man. It's not going to be the same MCU without you.
Mm-hmm.
Just, sucks. So
just thank you for everything that you've done. And
yes, not just the MCU. Yep. For your whole career. I think for sure that he will be an actor that people will introduce to their kids, as they get older, like, hey, this guy did something. Look at the roles he played in history. And I think that'll be something very cool. All right, so moving on, we're going to go talk about stuff that we've watched lately. I've watched quite a bit of things, especially since I really didn't talk about what I watched that much last week. So I'm going to start with a man that is notorious for doing bad movies, and that is Nicolas Cage, soon to be the Tiger King. He did a movie called
Superman that we never got.
The Superman we never got. This is true. He was in a movie called Primal, and I watched it. It's about Nick Cage, who He's a hunter, and he hunts down expensive animals, and then he sells them for money to the zoo. And then, for some reason, not really explained all that well, federal agents are going to use the same boat as he does to get his animals home to bring a serial killer home. So, great setup. You got serial killer animals on a ship. Problem is that this movie, there wasn't much of a budget. So while there's some decent animal stuff in it, they really don't have any good animal to human kills because they didn't have the money for it. And what you get is Kevin Durant, who's really good here, who played the Blob in X-Men Origins Wolverine, he was on the TV show The Strain, in a good guy role for once. He plays the killer here. He's really good, but unfortunately he just doesn't have a lot of good stuff to do. It's meanders a lot. Michael Imperioli is in it. He's okay. Famke Janssen's okay. Nick Cage is decent enough for Nick Cage. He yells a lot, which is what you want in a Nick Cage movie. But I was disappointed with how little the animals were actually involved in a lot of the action sequences, and I know a lot of it had to do with budget. So definitely skip that one, I think. Another movie I saw recently, which is something I put off for a while, not any reason really, it's been on Netflix for like 2 or 3 years. It's called The Endless, and I'm kind of mad at myself that I put it off so long. It's directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who did Resolution in spring, and they have another movie coming out later this year, and it's fantastic. It's probably one of the best movies I've seen in years. It's a sci-fi movie. It's a low-budget sci-fi movie with a great original plot. It centers on a cult that's known as the UFO cult. These two young brothers, played by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, the directors, they escape, and they decide to go. The one brother can't get over why they left, so they decide to go back and see what's going on. And then they get the real reason of what's happening there, and it's just crazy. And it has good effects for being a low-budget movie. It's really freaking good. If you have a chance, hit up Netflix right now. It's on there, The Endless. Check it out. Another movie I watched recently, I really liked. One of the honorable mentions I had in my top 10 podcast, Lost Bullet. It's a French action movie about a guy who's framed for murdering his friend who's a cop, and he has to go on the run and try to find this last piece of evidence that will prove that he didn't do it before he gets killed or gets arrested. It's a really good kind of like race against time thriller. It's on Netflix. It's as a Netflix original. Very well done. A lot of French movies. There are a lot of good French action movies out there, and that's one of them. Slumber Party Massacre movies. I rewatched the first one. It's a good slasher movie. The driller killer is a good killer. If you haven't seen these movies, it's girls at a slumber party and a serial killer breaks free. The second one, though, is what I really want to talk about. The second one is one of the girls survived, and she's having these dreams of this driller killer playing a guitar with a drill on the end of it. It's a pretty cool murder weapon. He keeps killing her sister in her dreams, and then at some point throughout the movie, he comes out of her dream and starts killing people. And it's like, it turned from a slasher serial killer movie to a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff, which they were definitely going for. And it's so weird and bizarre. I heard the third one's actually better. Joe Bob Briggs is where I watched Slumber Party Massacre 2, and he said the third one has a lot more gore and is a lot more fun. So maybe I'll catch that one. This one was just weird. It's very bizarre. The driller killer is a different actor, but he's great. He's the only good part of the movie. He kind of plays it like an Elvis, Andrew Dice Clay character ripoff, but it's good. God. It's good, though. Like, he does a good job. It's just
unbelievable.
He's the only good part of the movie. There's really not much else to talk about in that movie. The next movie I'm not going to talk a lot about, but I watched The Five Bloods. It's in my top 10. It's my number 2 right now this year. People watch this movie. It's not a straightforward movie like you would expect most Spike Lee movies to do. Wayne, I think you'd appreciate some aspects of it. He does 3 different aspect ratios throughout the movie. So you got the 4:3, you got the black bars on top, and then towards the last half hour is full widescreen. Fill in the screen. So full 60 minutes. As long as it's
not vertical video.
Yeah, no.
I hate vertical video.
He treats the 4:3 like you're watching A-Team mixed with actual Vietnam footage. So it's very cheesy, and a lot of people are like, oh, the action was cheesy. I'm like, that was the point, man. Like, it was supposed to be very cheesy in those segments. Boseman's very good. Delroy Lindo is fantastic in this movie. I know a buddy of mine thought the opposite, thought he was terrible. I thought he was great. Definitely Oscar worthy. Check it out. It's a Netflix original. Yeah, definitely recommend that one. She Dies Tomorrow, very weird and bizarre, but if you like those type movies, it's good. You know what? I'm going to end with Jawbreaker. Jawbreaker is one of those rare gems from the 90s. 1999. Stars Rebecca Gayheart, Rose McGowan, Julie Benz, and Judy Greer. And it is basically a trashy ripoff of Heathers, and it predates Mean Girls by about like 4 years. So it's like I believe I called it the trashy cousin of Mean Girls and Heathers. And if you've seen Heathers, you know Heathers is somewhat trashy. This is way trashier and way more white trashier. It's fun though. It's the same premise, similar premise as Heathers. They want to teach this girl a lesson. The one girl though, more devious than the others, puts a giant jawbreaker in her mouth, and she ends up choking to death on the jawbreaker because they put duct tape over her mouth, so she dies. They make it look like she was assaulted and murdered. Again, a very dark movie. Rose McGowan is kind of peak Rose McGowan at this time. She was in Scream around this time, Doom Generation, Ready to Rumble.
Was this her Marilyn Manson phase?
Yes, Marilyn Manson is actually in the movie with her.
Outstanding.
Yes, and she was also in Monkey Bone. That was only like a year or two after this. So this was like her goofy movie phase, not the Goofy movie, but goofy movie phase, where she's just in lots of weird films, and they're kind of like little time capsules to that year. And it's a strange movie to watch now, but it's still a lot of fun. It's very cheesy. It's very trashy. It's playing on Shudder if you have Shudder. And I definitely recommend checking it out. All right, Wayne, let's go to you. What did you watch?
All right. I'm going to start with the 2013 film Grudge Match. Watched that recently. Obviously, for those of you that don't know, it's Robert De Niro, Sylvester Stallone in a boxing movie. And I can't think of two better actors to have in a boxing movie where, they throw little Easter eggs, little nuggets of the Rocky series and Raging Bull out there. But the real reason I love this movie is because it has a Monster Jam scene in it.
It does.
For those of you that don't know, Kirky and I worked on Monster Jam for many years. And so it still has a warm place. This film still has a warm place for me in my heart. This film also stars Kim Basinger, Alan Arkin, Kevin Hart, Anthony Anderson makes an appearance, very brief. It's two over-the-hill boxers who have a grudge against one another because their third fight never took place because Sylvester Stallone's character calls off the match and retires. We come to find out it's due to certain issues that he has, and, they're both down on their luck, needing money. And, they decide to have this third and final match. Hilarity ensues as they're trying to hype it up. And Kirky, off the top of your head, do you remember the gentleman from The Walking Dead? I always forget his name. He played Shane on The Walking Dead.
John Bernthal.
John Bernthal, who is fantastic in pretty much everything he is in. I love him as the Punisher. I loved him in Wolf of Wall Street. I love him in this movie. He plays the illegitimate son of Robert De Niro. And, he actually ends up training Robert De Niro. And there's a few hilarious scenes in there with him. Yeah, I'm being vague on purpose because it's only 7 years old, so I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's got a lot of heart, and you end up feeling... So, 2013, or 2012, 2013 Grudge Match. Fun on many levels. The next movie I want to talk about is one that I am late to the party on. 2016 horror zombie film, Train to Busan. Wow, just fantastic. I am not a huge horror movie fan, but I do love zombie movies. And it's extremely well done. It is, I believe it's Korean.
Yes, South Korean. Yeah.
And it takes place. A divorced businessman, is taking his daughter on her birthday to go see her mother in the region, I'm going to say region of Busan.
Mm-hmm.
And while this is going on, the zombie apocalypse breaks out. And I don't really know. Forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce any of these actors' names. But it stars Yu Gong, Yumi Jung, Dong Sok Ma, and Su An Kim are the headliners. And Dong Sok Ma is just the brightest spot in this movie for me.
Yes.
He's the tough guy. He's the, I don't want to say the comedic backbone, but he has a lot of funny little gestures and like one-liners in there. But yeah, thinking about a horror movie that's basically set on a train. When I was hearing people describe this, I'm like, oh, this sounds fantastic. Boy, I have to eat my words because it's on the edge of your seat. It's really, really good, yo. If you are into zombie movies with Halloween coming up, you must see this movie. Because even if it's not in English and you have to read subtitles, it's okay because the action and just the expressions, you don't even need the dialogue because you know what's going on and you know what the characters are feeling. So yeah, in conclusion, Train to Busan, I'm sure as Kirky can add to, is fantastic. Sir, what are your thoughts on that one real quick?
I love it. It's one of the best zombie movies I've seen in years. It's playing on Netflix and Shudder right now. If you get a chance, check it out because it's really good. And you're right, the guy who you mentioned, he actually goes by an easier name to pronounce, Don Lee. He's an actor I'm a huge fan of. I talked about him a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Train to Busan is one of his best movies. Definitely check it out.
The last thing that I watched I want to talk about that actually turned out to be fantastic was The Outer Banks, 2012 Netflix series. This is kind of a cross between Dawson's Creek.
Isn't it? Didn't it just come out? You said 2012.
It did, yeah. I'm sorry, 2020.
Okay.
It stars a bunch of people that I don't know, so no big actors or anything to kind of get their characters mixed up on. But yeah, it stars our basic premise of this is there's a bunch of kids. There's two sides to the Outer Banks. The rich kid side and the poor kid side. And basically, the story centers around John B., played by Chase Stokes. He is abandoned by his father, who goes on a treasure hunt. And he's been missing for 9 months. And things happen, and they find some leads as to the treasure that they're looking for. And yeah, it's very good. Like I said, I was trying to make the connection here. It's kind of Dawson's Creek meets, gosh, I don't even know, Goonies in a sense.
Okay.
But with a lot more drama and whatnot in there. It's really, really good. It kept me going. I finished the all 11 episodes in like 3 days. Definitely something to check out. Yeah, The Outer Banks. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it did just come out. I don't want to ruin anything, but yep. The main stars, Chase Stokes, the talented and gorgeous Madeline Klein, Madison Bailey, also talented, beautiful. Jonathan Davies plays Pope. He is probably my favorite character on the show just because of his wild character swings. Watch and you'll understand.
Okay.
So, give it if y'all are looking for something, you can watch it really quick like I did, or you can extend it out. Either way, you're going to enjoy it.
All right.
And if you don't, come on the show and let's talk about it.
I'll end with one more. It's kind of a recommendation, I'm watching it, is I started The Boys Season 2. They're doing it different this year. It's 3 episodes now and then 1 a week for the next 5 weeks. So the first episode, I watch it. It's really good. If you like The Boys and you want to watch it, start now because it's on Amazon Prime. And if you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you. But going into the rest of the recommendations, I'm going to just recommend some horror films that are on Netflix right now with Halloween not so far away. October's right around the corner. Sleepy Hollow, The Babysitter with Samara Weaving, who we talked about earlier. There is a sequel of that one coming out. She is unfortunately not in it, but the rest of the cast is returning, and it looks really funny. And the first one was a surprise hit to me, and she was fantastic in it. Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves, who we also talked about, and Al Pacino, great movie. Horns with Daniel Radcliffe. Resident Evil Afterlife, we talked about those movies last week. Train to Busan, as we just talked about. Vampire's Assistant, a movie that people don't really remember, I don't think, but I thought was a pretty fun vampire comedy with John C. Reilly. Here's one of my favorites from the last 5-6 years, Green Room with Patrick Stewart and the late Anthony Yelchin. Very good movie. Highly recommend. It's a survival horror against Nazis run by the evil Patrick Stewart, and it's fantastic, and I think people should see that movie.
Nice.
The original Scary Movie. Oh, no, actually, take that back. It's Scary Movie 5. That one sucks. Underworld 3, really good. Splice, very entertaining. The Invitation is another one. It's a horror movie about a cult. Those are very popular over the last 5-6 years. There's been a couple of them this year. One BR is another one on Netflix. Check out The Invitation, though. Very well done. Love that movie. The Witch, not for everybody. I thought it was great. Before I Awake, directed by Mike Flanagan. It's one of his that was in hold for a while, then got dropped on Netflix. I really like this movie. That leads me to my last recommendation, which is going to be his The Haunting of Hill House, which is a horror anthology series. The first season is one complete story, so you can watch the first season now, and you don't need to rush to get it done because Haunting of Bly Manor comes out in October, and that's the sequel series, but it's another adaptation of another book. Haunting of Hill House is so good. One of the best series I've seen in my life. It's, as a horror fan, it's fantastic. I love that series. If you're into horror and you want something to watch this October, it's very good. It's a ghost story, very spooky, very scary. It's about a family and has lots of great actors in it, and definitely recommend everybody checking that one out. All right, Wayne, any recommendations from you?
Other than watch The Outer Banks if you get around to it. That's about it for me.
Okay. Big news in TV land. Alan Ritchson, who was in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies as Raphael. He was in the Hunger Game movies as Gloss. He has a new movie, Ghosts of War, out right now. And he played, in Blue Mountain State, he played Thad Castle. So if you've seen that series, it's very funny, kind of like an American Pie type series, like a Varsity Blues as well. He will be playing Jack Reacher, which is a movie that was done with 2 movies with Tom Cruise, who was good in the role because he's Tom Cruise, but really the character, apparently Jack Reacher is supposed to be like 6'3" and like 250 pounds. That's not Tom Cruise. Alan Ritchson fits that role to a T just by the look at him. He's a pretty good performer, so he'll be playing Jack Reacher on the Amazon TV show. I'm pretty excited about that. So on to movies. That's all I have for news. Movies, I just got one movie to talk about, and it's something I just really found out about. And it's called Mank, and it's from David Fincher. It stars Gary Oldman, and it's about the Citizen King writer and what he had to go through on that movie. And it's all done in black and white, and it hits Netflix this fall. So it's coming soon. So not much was known about this movie, at least by me. I'm excited because I love Fincher. He's a great director and does lots of great work. So I'm looking forward to that. That's our show for this week. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to message us or call us if you know us personally. And have yourself a great week. Thanks.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Doop, doo, 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 doo.
Wayne's musical interlude will end it for us. Thank you and good night.